people from communities outside of your own, and you dream about your future career and how you're going to make the world a better place. Almost 30 years ago, we created traditions that still exist today. Leon has a true gift for community building, and I think you'll be drawn to his open-mindedness, maturity, and thoughtfulness. Westside might feel the call to join in his efforts and live out our first, second, fifth, sixth, and maybe eighth UU principle. His reflection is recorded this morning because he is out of state at the moment, but he will be live via Zoom after the service so that you can remain in the sanctuary and ask him questions. For those of you joining us on Facebook Live, please switch over to Zoom when the worship service is over so that you can participate in the question and answer period, otherwise known as our virtual coffee hour. So please make yourself comfortable for our morning's prelude. It is performed by Yuki Kumamoto. It is The Great Wall of Kiev from pictures at an exhibition by Mussorgsky. Thank you, Yuki. Our opening words are entitled Wake Up by Christian Schmidt. Let us wake up, not just from the Sunday morning exhaustion, from the wish for a few more drowsy minutes in bed. Let us wake up to this world we live in, to its beauty and wonder, and also to its tragedy and pain. We must wake up to this reality, that not all in our world have what we do, however much or little that is. We must wake up to the idea that our wholeness, our lives, are only as complete as the lives of those around us, of those we are inextricably tied in a great web of mutuality, of which all of us are a part. We must #stay woke, in the words of our friends and colleagues involved in Black Lives Matter, working every day for racial justice in our country. Let us wake up. Let us stay awake. Let us #stay woke. And now, in this time and place, let us worship together. A flame within a chalice, a cup with a stem and a foot, represents the Unitarian Universalist Association, or UUA, and is a symbol of the Unitarian Universalist faith. The flaming chalice is a symbol of both the heritage of our past and the light of hope within this church today. If you have a chalice with you at home, please light it with our chalice lighters this morning, Isaac Garcia and Cadence Rodriguez. Our chalice lighting words come from Kia Lee Bordner, entitled 8 Principles in Action. We, Unitarian Universalists of Westside UU Church, light our chalice in honor of the 8 principles of our shared Unitarian Universalist faith. The inherent worth and dignity of every person means respect guides us in all of our interactions with anyone. Justice, equality, and compassion in human relations is determined by those without the privilege and power to establish the frameworks from which these are received. Acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations requires all to actively engage in ensuring conditions are supportive for all to thrive. A free and responsible search for truth and meaning is a challenging, ever-changing, all-encompassing call that we must answer. The right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large is about inclusive structures and communities that provide space for all. The goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all can only be reached through intentional co-liberation for all. Respect the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part asks us to remember that each and every creature is an embodiment of the love of the universe, and each of us must act accordingly. And journeying through spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions must be led by those who have been harmed by these and who have a vision for the future. Our opening hymn this morning is number 170. We are a gentle, angry people. You'll find it in your gray hymnal. Please stand if you are able and willing.
We
join me in our affirmation that brings us together. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest of truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve others in community, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with creation. Thus do we covenant with one another. Please come forward. You can be seated. Thank you. Please come forward if you would like to have a close-up view of our Time for All Ages, which will be presented by our Director of Lifespan Religious Education, Nikki Kennedy.
Good morning. How are you guys? Good morning. I'm so happy to see you here today. Thank you for your help. I have a book I'd like to share with you today. The reflection today that we're going to hear in a little bit talks about how one person can make a huge difference in the lives of many. And we have another local someone, who some of you may have heard about. Her name is Opal Lee, and she is someone who made a huge difference because of her persistence, because of the love that she has, and because of her determination. Now, those are kind of big words, but I think after you hear the book, you'll understand. So I'm going to read this to you. So this is her when she was little. Her name is Opal Lee. Can you guys say that? Say that, Opal Lee? Opal Lee. Very good. So it's called Opal Lee and What It Means to Be Free. Happy Juneteenth Jamboree. Come and join the fun. Opal Lee waved to her great-grandson as he barreled across the park. He zipped past lines of picnic tables covered with platters of barbecue, baked beans, tomato tarts, and raspberry cobbler. He hurried past a leaping choir draped in purple robes. He danced a jig with cowboys playing fiddles, but they did not stop his flow. Buddy ran to the blooming tree where Opal Lee held court. Her braided hair was a silver crown, her eyes twinkling like stars. Can you guys see how they're gathered under a tree? Great grand deer, Buddy called. Tell us a Juneteenth story. Opal raised her face to the sun as memories of yesteryear filled her vision. When she had been a Texas bud, like the children at her feet, Granddaddy Zach told freedom stories on his wooden porch. As Opal Lee remembered his words, she lifted her hands and cheered, Juneteenth means freedom, and now it's story time. Then Opal Lee began. Once upon a blazing sun, black bodies were bought and sold like cattle. Black men plowed the fields, but were not allowed to own the land. Black women cooked the food, but were not allowed to feast on roast and ribs from the master's table. Black children cleansed the one-room schoolhouses, but were not allowed to read and to write. Black children earning and learning were against the law. Slavery was a thief. American slavery dragged on like a plague until January 1st, 1863. That's when President Lincoln wielded courage and raised his feather pen. He signed the Emancipation Proclamation with a mighty stroke. Glory, glory, glory. Freedom was dazzling. News was like bright, starry night. However, Texas was big and many miles away from Mr. Lincoln. White masters defied his words and black bodies remained in bondage. They plowed, they cooked, they cleaned, and freedom did not ring through Texas in 1863. It was toiling times in the Lone Star State. The Lone Star State, that's Texas. Maybe you've heard that before. For 2 years, 5 months, and 18 more weary days, then finally joy jumped on dancing feet in the Gulf town of Galveston. The year was 1865. The day was June 19th. Gordon Granger marched through Galveston with Union Army troops. The general raised his booming voice and spoke these righteous words. The people of Texas are informed that, in accordance with a proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free. Opally danced in a circle, freedom, hope, and joy divine. Juneteenth, it's freedom time. Can you imagine the excitement? Singing filled the air. Happy tears rolled down like rain. Black families leaped through cotton fields and played their tambourines. It was a day of jubilee, perfect for Texas barbecue, watermelon, and sweet potato pie. Delicious delights they had been denied during their servitude. Opally told the children, remember my words for safekeeping. Remember what I say, Juneteenth. Juneteenth is bigger than Texas, bigger than singing, bigger than bands. Juneteenth is freedom rising, and freedom is for everyone. Juneteenth is for you and for me. As the children clapped and cheered, Buddy tagged her sleeve. Great grandeur, he called. What was Juneteenth like when you were a kid? Opally unwrapped another story. Blacks and whites lived separately when I was a child. Jim Crow signs littered old Fort Worth in every public place. Black families were banned from the Forest Park Zoo, except one day a year. On Juneteenth, we could picnic, party, and ride the Ferris wheel. I hated that zoo, but I loved it too. The birdhouse was my favorite. Buddy groaned and shook his head. The old days, they just don't sound so good. Good and bad work together, like sun and rain. I spent days on Granddaddy's porch, reading poetry books. His farm was my playground. I ran across the fields and climbed the tallest oak. Glory, glory, glory. Some memories are chocolate sweet, but some memories are cut and bruises. My saddest season started Juneteenth, 1939. An angry mob with flashing sticks burned down my family's new house. Their broken minds and evil hearts were so afraid of black progress, the police made no arrests. My family moved away. And yet the embers burn, that fire still lives in me. I learned a big lesson that Juneteenth day. Freedom is a golden coin. Struggle makes it shine. And no matter how long it takes for freedom to stretch across all the land, I will keep on teaching. I will keep on reaching. I will keep on walking. I will keep on talking. I will raise my voice on the prairie and the mountaintop until freedom rings. The children lifted their hands in praise. Freedom, hope, and joy divine. Juneteenth means it's freedom time. Opal winked and chuckled. I think now it's time for barbecue, strawberry cake, and red Juneteenth punch. Glory, glory, glory. Buddy cheered and waved his hands. When he bounced up to leave, Opal hugged him tightly. Then, just like birds in flight, all the children flocked into Opal's arms. Opal studied their shining faces. Black, brown, bronze, tan, gold, white, freckles. As the children dashed away, she marveled at the bright future. She rested against the blooming tree and whispered into the wind, "Remember my words for safekeeping. Remember what I say. Freedom is for everyone. Juneteenth is you and me." And then she has some recipes in the back. This book is in our library, and you guys can check it out. What I want you to know is Opal Lee is one person that made such a difference, not just in Fort Worth, but in the world. And you guys can all make a difference by being the best version of you, by caring and loving just as you always do. I'm so happy to be here with you guys, and I hope you guys will check out some of the books. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Nikki. I want to take this time to introduce you to someone new to our community. And Betty, if you would stand up and turn around and show yourself to the congregation. This is Betty Churchman. She is our new pastoral care minister. And so she is available to you for pastoral care needs. You can contact her just like you would anyone on the pastoral care team by emailing pastoralcare@westsideu.org or contacting any member on the team or calling the church phone number. So we're very pleased you're here with us. Thank you very much and welcome.
Good morning. I'm Melissa Trask, your pastoral care associate this morning. In our community here at Westside, we make time each week to share pieces of our lives with one another. We do this because each person in this community has value. Each person's experience matters. Submit your joys and concerns to the team by emailing pastoralcare@westsideu.org or contacting any member of the team. We share our concerns with one another today, knowing that sorrows come into each person's life, knowing that together we offer comfort. We have a concern from Tara Mitchell. She put, "On Friday, I learned that I have a blood clot in my jugular vein. I spent the night in the hospital, but now am home with oral blood thinners and hope to meet with a specialist soon that can determine the best treatment for this precarious situation." And I also have a concern from Carolyn Nixon. Says, "My father was admitted to Texas Health Fort Worth on Friday. The doctors are trying to determine his diagnosis. Please send healing vibes his way." And we also share our joys with one another, knowing that too joys come into all of our lives, knowing that together our voices can rise in a chorus of celebration. Not every joy or concern can be shared openly in community. Some must be shared eye to eye or simply held in the heart. We further recognize that some do not have voices with which to speak the depths of their pain or the height of their celebration. We make space each week for musical centering, knowing the life and experience of every person matters, and together our light shines brighter.
As we hold all the joys and concerns among us, both those spoken and unspoken, let us center to an instrumental version of "Be the Light" by Leah Morris, performed by you.
Good morning. My name is Diane Austin, and I am one of the meditation group leaders. I invite you to relax your mind and body and join in a time of meditation. I will begin with a pastoral introduction before we move into a time for silence. Our Tibetan prayer bowl will sound to signal the start of the time for your own meditation, prayer, or reflection, and it will sound again at the end. Our introduction today is an interfaith prayer for justice makers by John Saxton. Holy One, known by many names and beyond all names, known in many ways and beyond our knowing, we gather together as people of many faiths, as Christians, Jews, Muslims, and Unitarian Universalists, as believers and non-believers, young and old, gay and straight, Black and white and Hispanic and Asian, Republicans and Democrats, documented and undocumented, siblings and neighbors. A human rainbow united by our shared faith in the ideals of justice, democracy, community, the common good, and love of our neighbors. Shelter us, we pray, when the cold winds of indifference, divisiveness, and narrow self-interest howl in the night, chilling our hearts and rattling the windows of our souls. Help us find a new hope, we ask, when hope is hard to find. When we forget that this struggle is a movement, not a moment. When we wonder whether we'll ever reach the promised land of beloved community and cry out in despair and frustration, how long? How long? Remind us this morning and with the dawning of each new day that the moral arc of the universe is long, but that it bends toward justice. Grant us, we pray, the strength and courage to stand up and speak out against injustice, discrimination, and oppression, to reclaim in this day and time the mantle of prophets who throughout the ages have spoken truth to power and called those with power and privilege to honor, respect, protect, and care for the least of those among us, the poor, the homeless, the hungry, the sick, the broken, the forgotten, the strangers in our land. Grant us too wisdom and humility that we might speak our truth in love, remembering that hatred and bitterness can never cure the disease of fear. Accompany us as you did those brave souls who, in the face of police and horses and billy clubs, crossed the Edmund Pettus Bridge and walked from Selma to Montgomery to demand that the most fundamental right in a democratic society, the right to vote, not be denied to any citizen of this nation. This we pray in the name of all that we hold sacred, holy, right, good, and true. Let the people say amen. May it be so.
The purpose of the church is to encourage all who gather there to grow more generous in spirit and in action. This is the great end of all the world's faith traditions, to bring the human being closer to the divine by acts of creation and compassion. In the spirit of generosity, Westside chooses to reach out to our wider community. We now take an offering that allows us to exercise that all-important generosity of spirit, an offering that will support this self-supporting church and its ministries. Our plate offering for March will go to NAMI Tarrant County, the National Alliance for Mental Illness of Tarrant County. NAMI Tarrant County is a grassroots mental health organization, part of the largest grassroots mental health organization in America. In addition to Tarrant County, it serves Johnson, Parker, and Wise counties. It provides free peer-led mental health education classes and support groups for individuals living with a mental health condition and their loved ones, as well as hosts community events. Its goals are to advocate for non-discriminatory access to quality health care, housing, education, and employment for people with mental illness, and to improve the quality of life for all affected by mental illness, and eradicate the stigma and misconceptions of mental disorders. NAMI Tarrant County holds monthly support groups at its Fort Worth office and provides presentations which offer audiences the opportunity to hear stories of lived experiences from people with mental health conditions. The gifts of our congregation will be most gratefully received here in the sanctuary through the Venco mobile app, our church website, or a check by mail. Please enjoy this musical offering performed by Yuki and Trisha Bose, a Ukrainian lullaby. Thank you for putting into practice the spiritual virtue of generosity. Our giving connects us to the wider web of our community. Our guest in the pulpit this morning is Leon Reed Jr., a Fort Worth Marine, Horned Frog, and criminal defense attorney. He embarked on a 200-plus mile walk from his home in Como to Austin to hand-deliver a plan with tangible actions for police reform and community relations to Governor Greg Abbott. With the Soul Matters theme of renewing faith this month, I invited Leon to reflect on his journey and how his faith was renewed. Enjoy his reflection.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for inviting me. I'd like to thank, of course, my special friend Caroline, who thought enough of me to invite me here to bore you all this morning. But nonetheless, she and I go way back to when we were both younger students at TCU. Both of us were ambitious, and we both still love our university, and I'm so glad and blessed that she and her family are still doing well. It's always good to know that friends are doing well, and it blesses me. And so I'd also like to thank the good folk of Westside Unitarian Universalist Church. I bring you greetings from Como First Missionary Baptist Church, the pride of the West Side, where we're under the tutelage of Reverend Kenneth Jones Jr., who's my pastor. And so we have a saying in the Baptist church, the 5 Baptist B's, be brief, brother, be brief, or as my pastor would say, don't worry, like Elizabeth Taylor told her 5th husband, I don't plan on keeping you long. So with that being said, my name is Leon Reed Jr. I am a practicing criminal defense attorney here in Fort Worth. I was raised in Fort Worth in a small neighborhood on the west side. You may have heard of it. It's called Como. Oftentimes we refer to ourselves as our own little mini city, but we're not, but we have that kind of mini city feel. And so we are active in the city of Fort Worth. We're active politically. We pride ourselves on our history and voting. And so Como is where I'm from, and in that foundation is where I got a lot of my enthusiasm for civic involvement. When I graduated from Western Hills High School, I ended up going to the Marine Corps, where I served 7 years. While I was in the Marine Corps, I had the opportunity to be an embassy guard at 3 different locations around the globe. Came home, went to TCU for undergrad, went to Texas Tech University for law school. Then I came back to Fort Worth and hung a shingle in my hometown. And I still live in the neighborhood that I was raised in. And that's by choice and not by circumstance. And so in the past, I've been practicing law now in Fort Worth, Tarrant County primarily for about the past 18 or so years. And I've primarily been doing criminal defense work. I did run for judge in 2014. On your ballot, I was the guy who came in second place. In the summer of 2020, I embarked on a walk from Fort Worth to the city of Austin with the purpose of bettering police and community relations, and that walk was called Walk for Reform. And what I want to talk with you about today is how that all came to be, the goals, the motivations, some things that happened along the way, and some things that were born of it. And hopefully, by the end of my brief presentation, you'll have some type of encouragement that no matter who you are or where you are, you do matter and you can make a difference. And so with that, when I say you do matter, I'm a child of the 80s, which was probably the best time to live in human history ever. You know, everything fun came out of the 80s, you know. There was a favorite movie that I had of mine that came out of the 80s, and it was called The Breakfast Club. And many of you may know The Breakfast Club, and in that movie, some students had to do a day of detention, and each student had a different persona or a different character. And, you know, there was the yuppie girl that was, you know, in the in crowd. Then you had the standalone girl who was a mystery to everyone. You had the smart, geeky boy. Then you had the athlete who was not supposed to be too bright. And then you had the guy who was, you know, portrayed as the criminal or the, you know, the wild card in the school. And there was a particular line in that movie that really stuck out to me even when I saw it a long time ago. And that was when the athlete told the character who was supposed to be the criminal, the outcast, he looked at him and he said, "Man, you don't even count. If you were to die today, the world wouldn't even miss you." And it struck me as a particularly cruel thing to say to someone, that you don't even count. You don't matter. And so, as I reflected then, during what has now been coined the Summer of Floyd, and I look back on the protests that were taking place across the country, East Coast to West Coast, North, South, even right here in Fort Worth, it was all about people wanting to matter. People saying that I am here and I do count, and that the life of George Floyd matters, and that his life is part of a larger collective of not only African Americans, but human beings who just want to matter and have every right to matter. And the protests that were taking place across the country, you know, they came in various forms. Some were more peaceful, some were more agitated, and some were outright destructive. And each served its purpose. And I participated in several rallies downtown. I'm not the type of person who will go out and tear something up. That's not me. That's not what I do. But I would always show up because you need to show that there is support for the effort. But after showing up so many times, I began to understand that that was not the best way for me to get my message across. That I could somehow do more with my position as an attorney to bring more attention to the need for common sense police reforms that would be designed to better police and community relations. Because at the time and even today, you have citizens in the communities that are afraid of police, and you have police who are policing communities, and the police officers are afraid. And that's just not a dynamic that's good for any civilized society. You can't have scared officers policing communities that are afraid of them. My goal in embarking on the Walk for Reform was to come up with common sense, well thought out ideas that would be designed to better police and community relations. It wasn't an effort in any way, shape, form, or fashion to defund the police. I believe that in any organized and civilized society, you're going to need police because the devil has not resigned his position. There will always be people who are subject to evil influence. The way that I thought about it, the way that I began to reflect on was I began to think of things that were done historically when it came to getting the government's attention, and it's the need for the government to address certain things. And of course, I looked back on the 60s when America was going through a transition in recognizing the human rights of African Americans. Before we could even get to civil rights, we had to be looked at as being human. And so oftentimes I join civil rights movement with human rights movement, because if you recognize someone as being a human being, then civil rights becomes a whole lot easier. And so I look back at some of the things that some of the prominent figures in the civil rights and civil liberties and human rights movement had done. I remember back in 1917, I remember reading back in 1917 about a march that took place in New York City that many people don't know about, but it was a march of about 15,000 people, most dressed in all white, but it was a silent march that was put on by the NAACP. And they marched from like 57th Street down to 23rd Street or something to bring attention to the need for people to stop lynching African Americans. But it was a silent march, but it drew attention. I remembered the march from Selma, Alabama to Montgomery, Alabama, that was led by Dr. King and John Lewis, may he rest in peace, and how they walked 50 miles from Selma, Alabama to Montgomery, Alabama, to bring attention to the need for equality and rights for African Americans. And I remembered that as a child, listening to the songs that my grandmother and my grandparents used to sing, songs called Walk On by Faith. You know, if you just take one step, God will do the rest. Step out on faith. And all of these things had the action of marching, of walking. And so my mind, and me being the Marine that I am, I said, well, you know, surely if people can walk 50 miles from Selma to Montgomery, and when you look back at the images of them, they're walking often in suits, ties, hats, carrying a suitcase. They didn't have the latest in footwear, the latest technology, the latest Nikes or Hokas or Brooks. They had their Sunday shoes and flat heels. They walked 50 miles, carrying their luggage, sleeping in fields. And I said to myself that surely, if they can walk 50 miles, that with today's technology and the means that I have available, surely I ought to be able to walk 200. And over the course of that 200, bring attention to why I'm doing it. And so I got together with a group of other lawyers. This was not a singular effort. Some other lawyers and we sat down and we started identifying a lot of the issues that we'd seen as defense attorneys, because we have access to a whole lot more than the average person in public. We see the body cams, we see the dash cams, we see and read the police reports. We talk to people who sometimes had, quite frankly, done something that they had no business doing, but but they were still treated in a way that the law doesn't allow. And so we started trying to come up with thought processes and evidence-based solutions. We didn't want to go and bring something that was all conjecture and surmise because we're attorneys. And we have the ability and the wherewithal and the resources to look into data, to get research, to see what works and what doesn't. And we, using our combined knowledge, we came up with a substantial list that we all just kind of lumped into 3 buckets of, the front end, recruiting and training, daily operations was the second bucket, and the final bucket was creating a culture of accountability. And we had all of these different ideas and things, and not everything, well, I would say not anything was bad about police officers. Everything was all designed to work on the relationship between police and the communities, to better the relationships. I had spoken with my mother in March about what I wanted to do, and she gave me the side eye that only a mother could give someone who says that they want to walk 200 miles. But my mother knew her son, and so her simple advice to me was, do what you think you have to do. And so she wouldn't live long enough to see me embark on the endeavor. She passed away April 17th of 2020. And this was something that I wanted to do also for her. But when I took off, I left from my church in Como, where my pastor prayed for me, praying because as soon as I took off walking, I didn't know what was out there. And that's where faith kicks in. That when you know there's a chair there, it's easy to sit down. But when you're blindfolded and someone says, sit down, trust me, there's a chair there, you still have a degree of hesitancy. When we prayed at my church that morning, there wasn't a dry eye, and I believe even the cameramen were crying, because it was scary. I did not know what lay ahead of me for a 200-mile stretch down the road. I didn't know what my body would do. I didn't know what would be out there. I didn't know, and this was something that Governor Abbott had said, hey, maybe it's time Texas has a George Floyd Act. So I was like, okay, well, I'll walk 200 miles to show you that other people believe in what you're saying, and I'll come with ideas as well. You can take them, you can leave them, but I want to let you know that there are people who do support the need for common sense police reforms. And as I began to walk, then the phone calls started coming in from different police departments, different support from different police chiefs who wanted to meet with me and met with me along the way. Hey, you get down there, you see the governor, tell him about what we're doing. This is a great opportunity for us to get something in front of them that we've been working on as well. And so we had this swelling of support, which at various points along the way, total strangers would come and encourage me. Total strangers would give us money. Hey, here's $100. I want, for gas. Will you take a picture with my sons? There he is, kids. Families driving up, pulling up. Hey, you walking to Austin, you're that guy. Can my kids take a picture with you? The kind of things that really touch you when other people see what you're doing, recognize what you're doing, and say, we understand where you are as a human being and support what you're doing. Just those small acts of kindness along the way really can, I hate to say restore, because I haven't lost my faith in humanity, but it certainly builds your faith in humanity. And of course, if you follow the walk, you'll know that when I did walk into Austin, that our governor, the same morning that I walked into Austin, he found his way to Fort Worth. And I was like, well, man, you could have gave me a ride, you know. If I walked all this way, I'm like, I'm here, bro, I come in peace, But since he wasn't there, I decided to wait 35 days. And so for 35 days, I waited in Austin. 35 was because I'd walked down I-35. I said, okay, I'll wait 35 days. So for 35 days, Monday through Friday, I would wait outside of the governor's mansion from 9 to 11 in the morning. People opened their doors, their wallets, their hotel points, and provided me, hey, you can stay I'll use some of my points. You can stay 3 days at this hotel. You can stay 2 days here. I got an Airbnb. This person got me a week here, week there. And people just volunteered their points and so forth, and it really blessed me in the effort. And although I did not meet directly with the governor, I did call and let them know, like, hey, my name's Leon Reed. Wait a minute. And somebody shuffled, and the governor's general counsel got on the phone, said, I'll meet with you. I said, okay, well, I'm from Texas. I'm not rude, I will meet with you, but know that I would have called you. I would not have walked 200 miles just to talk to you. But I will meet with you in hopes that you'll understand that I come in peace, and, it won't be to the governor's detriment to talk to me, whom I'd spoken, and I presented to them. On July 31st, of 2021, I read an article that the governor had quietly passed a police reform bill with a lot of the same things that I had spoken to his staff about. Now, he didn't mention our efforts at all, but I told our group that, look, one of a few things happened. One, either he said, if we ask him that, hey, what we came up with had nothing to do with what Leon and brought. We came up with this all on our own. Well, if that were the case, then maybe you should listen to some of the other things that we have that I did not present to you, because we're thinking along the same vein. If you thought of it on your own and we thought of it on our own, then maybe you ought to listen to the rest of what we have to say. Or if you actually did glean this legislation from what we brought to you, then maybe you ought to listen to the rest of it, because there's probably some nuggets in there too that you could use as well. So we took it as a win-win. Either you're going to say it had nothing to do with what we brought to you, even though you used the exact same verbiage that I presented to your staff, or you did use what we brought, you just didn't want to show us any love. But either way, we have some more. So I know I've been already a little bit long-winded, but I want to tell you this. There are several points in history where one person did make a difference. Rosa Parks was one person, but she made a difference. When you look at Barbara Jordan, one person, but she made a difference. Shirley Chisholm, one person who made a difference. Martin Luther King, one person. Mother Teresa, one person. Mahatma Gandhi, one person. Leon, one person. So whoever you are, you're here for a purpose. Don't think that whatever it is that you have as a vision for peace, equality, and respect amongst fellow human beings is too big for you to have an impact on. Your one small step of faith is all that is required. You have to be able to take that risk, step out on faith that what you're doing will have merit in the end. So I hope that I've in some way inspired you all to just know that you can individually make a difference. Walk for Reform was not a one-time thing. It was a beginning. We're looking at other events where we're not necessarily going to walk people 200 miles to Austin, but we may do localized events in several different cities representative of the distances. We had people from Houston that were interested, 160 miles, people from San Antonio, 90 miles to Austin. So we are looking at having future endeavors where we walk locally along prescribed pathways, but at the end of the walks, everyone then can either drive to Austin, meet in Austin, or contact your representative to let them know that there are some valid ideas that you should at least consider that could help build better police and community relations. And it all starts and is built upon individuals. So be bold, be brave, have faith, take that step, and walk on by faith. Thank you for having me. God bless you all, and I hope you don't speak or think too poorly of me. Thank you. Thank you.
Let's join together in our closing hymn today, Lift Every Voice and Sing. It is number 149 in your gray hymnal. We will sing the first 4 verses, and please stand if you are able and willing.
We're going to sing one verse. The first verse. Yep, just the first one.
Lift every voice and sing till even heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listing skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our first day is begun. Let us march on till victory is won.
May we see all as it is. May it all be as we see it. May we be the ones to make it as it should be. For if not us, who? If not now, when? This is answering the cry of justice with the work of peace. This is redeeming the pain of history with the grace of wisdom. This is the work we are called to do, and this is the call we answer now. To be the barrier and the bridge, to be the living embodiment of our principles, to be about the work of building the beloved community, to be a people of intention and a people of conscience. The flame is extinguished, but not our hope for the future, our courage in the face of crisis, or the love we share in all the world. Join me today in a different congregational closing by Jim McGaw. It is in your order of service. Go in peace, seeking justice. Go in peace, committed to equal rights and opportunities for all. Go in the peace that is created when together we build communities of true solidarity, deep compassion, and fierce, unrelenting love. Go in peace. That ends our formal service, but we have another opportunity to be in community with one another. You join our virtual coffee hour on Zoom until 12:30 this afternoon.